and
Thank you, Dr. Suzuki. I think the beauty of the last speech is that in spite of our protestations to moral language, that was itself a moral speech. And I say that I'm a trained ethicist, whatever that means. And I was glad the way you steered the discussion and the presentation of Dr. Hirsch, precisely because we've forgotten, I think, the very root word that both economy and ecology find themselves rooted in, which is oikos. Oikologia, oikonomia, which refers to the household. Oikos referring to the household. And therefore, the very term home economics, I think we've bloated economics too much that we've forgotten that we clean our homes, but we pollute the homes outside it. There is something wrong when we want our homes clean, and yet we pollute the rest of the environment. And that's why I was glad that you've raised here in this panel the whole issue, not just of the antithetical language, but the ethical language itself. And I think the problem with moral language is that we don't distinguish the moral speech from the ethical speech. Ethics is when our moral agency accepts the responsibility for the things we've done. And therefore, for the nations that have polluted the earth much more, demands from them more and greater responsibility. That is the ethical response. That is not moral speech. And therefore, what my worry about initially about this panel is that while we posit climate change as possibly antithetical to sustainable development, I haven't quite heard from the panel, or from us in any case, it's a common burden, I shared the burden, a description of what makes sustainable development. In other words, we're describing the antithesis, but I haven't quite heard what's the thesis. The thesis being that the fundamental precepts of sustainable development is justice, participation, and sustainability itself, and how far we have prospered those so that the common vulnerability of the household is what we take care of rather than politics rather than economics that is of Planderus, or economic that lacks not only political will but political courage to bring in the issue of common vulnerability of the common household. And I think if we can do that, we go a little bit further, I think, in not only our protestation to moral speech, but to ethical responsibility.
I think the fundamental challenge is to realize that we are still deeply embedded in the natural world, and that our very survival depends on it. And if we don't have a vibrant natural world, we can't have true sustainability of our society. What climate is doing is it's pulling apart ecosystems, because in Canada, for example, our parks are being demolished. With only a 0.7 degree rise, our parks are being pulled apart because plants, certain trees, simply can't move rapidly enough to stay within the temperature regime. Animals, of course, can move much more readily, but what's happening is that our parks are being totally altered, and it's going to take thousands of years to come back to some kind of balance, but we're tearing apart the very things that we depend on for our water, for our food, and so on. So I think that's why climate change and sustainable development are indeed antithetical. I wanted to also mention, though, that to the last person before you, that Kyoto took account of the fact that the rich nations had created the problem. And it was the industrialized world that set a target, while the developing world was allowed to increase their emissions until we get to the second stage of that. I mean, that was the idea. Now, I'm ashamed to belong to a country.
The U.S. never signed.
Right, and my country signed it. My country signed it in 2001. We just got a new prime minister who said, oh, we can't do that. It'll destroy the economy. So what he has done is elevated the economy above ecology. Ecology is the study of household or home. Economics is its management. What ecologists try to do is determine what are the fundamental principles and conditions that allow life to flourish and survive. Not a bad set of information. You would have thought any group in society would say, oh, before we do that, wait a minute now, what are those ecologists telling us? Because we shouldn't violate those. But my country, my prime minister says, oh, we can't do anything about climate, it'll destroy the economy. So he's elevated economics above everything else. I had the Minister of the Environment in Alberta, the richest province in one of the richest countries in the world, say to me, listen, Suzuki, you enviros better understand. We can't afford to protect the environment if we don't have a strong growing economy. And I said, I thought you were the Minister of the Environment, not the Minister of Finance. I thought your job was to protect the environment. But even the Minister of the Environment thinks the economy is the source of everything that matters, and we can afford to protect the environment. So we've got to, we got to get ecos back into economics. Who's got
this gentleman has been
who's got the microphone?
Speak up loudly. Just a quick question. I'm also with Footprint Network, and one of the things that we're trying to do, working with governments around the world to do, is to put ecological footprint analysis on par with GDP. What do you think it would take to get countries around the world to say, you know, we are very dependent on our environmental resources, and so we have to measure as closely as we do our gross domestic product, where we are, you know, every single day, every single year, with our own natural resource base. What would it take to get us there?
Why don't you take another question before you answer? For a long time.
Sure, okay, well, we'll come back to you. Let's give him a mic, please.
Yeah, thank you. I'm Namanga Ngongi, President of the Alliance for a Green Revolution in Africa. But the discussions, when kept at the level of global and general issues, loses focus a little bit for us who are in Africa. We pollute the least, and but all studies are going to suffer the most. I know that Kiribati and the Maldives will also have a great impact. But in Africa, the greatest impact would be on agriculture. And the greatest contributor of Africa, contribution of Africa to global warming is in agriculture. Why? Because most of the forest is cut because of agriculture. A lot of the next biggest factor is for fuel wood. The next biggest factor is for housing. I mean, somehow we have to deal with these issues. If we cannot improve productivity of land, the pressure on existing land will only increase. So there's no dancing around it, whatever the theories may be for it. I agree, the governments of Africa should take first the lead. They realize their own problems and take the actions. But clearly, a lot of assistance that is already going to Africa could also be diverted to focus more on agriculture and natural resource management. A lot of the discussions, especially by a colleague here who just talked about Ecuador, I mean, clearly it's the same problems. If these kinds of discussions are not taking place at the national level, and national policy makers are not informed from internal discussions of what's going on in their own countries, whatever is prescribed coming from Copenhagen or Kyoto or wherever the next meeting will be, will have very little import in the policy developments in those countries. What I will ask is that people should be able to support also the African governments or countries, not only governments, countries, civil societies and governments, to be able to focus on these issues. The universities, if you went there are very few that have any credible programs on environmental management. Very few, if you went. You go to research stations, and I visit many of them. They don't even have the basic instruments to know whether they are having less rainfall or more rainfall. It's all anecdotal. So there is a little bit more of support that is needed in these countries for them to be able to participate, let me say, a little bit more intelligently in the discussions that are taking place around the world, for them to be able to formulate their own policy, their own needs, rather than the needs to be identified for them to be included in their own policy development. So I would say probably there should be a disaggregation of the discussion a little bit to focus more on regional issues, on regional capacities also. A lot of emphasis is placed on Copenhagen.